Hey string slingers, it's Frank Spear, that guitar guy, back with you. Today I want to talk to you about the easiest way I know how to teach you to solo on guitar. We're going to be playing in the key of G major and E minor, which is G major. E minor and G major are the same. That's theory. I've talked about it in other lessons. We won't talk about it today. But the E minor pentatonic scale, all right, along with the G major scale, are the same notes. They contain the same notes. So we're going to combine those two patterns and we're going to target the root notes of the chords as they change. So we're in the key of G and we're playing G, E minor, C, D. We're just going to play G major the entire time. And when it goes to the E minor chord, we're going to target that E note in the G major scale. When it goes to the C chord, we're going to target the C note in the G major scale. And the D note, we're going to target the D in the G major scale. We're never going to change scales, okay? Now we can also target the third of each chord and the fifth of each chord. So that gives us variety. We can change up the sound a bit. So when we're at G, we can play that G note. We can play the third, which is B. We can play the fifth, which is D. That makes up a G major chord. The 1, the 3, and the 5. The first, the third, and the fifth notes of the G major scale make up a G major chord. Same with each chord. If it's minor, it's just a flat 3. All right, the third is lowered 1 note. So when we go to the E minor, we're playing the 1, the flat 3, and the 5 of E minor. So we're looking for the... Now, here's the thing to remember. All of these notes come out of the G major scale. There isn't a note that's not in the G major scale. There's 7 notes in the G major scale. Every chord in the key of G major is made up of those 7 notes. Some of those 7 notes. Same in every key. If you're in A major, right, every chord in A major is made up of the 7 notes of the A major scale. So if you use the notes of the A major scale over every chord, it only makes sense that they would all work because they're made up of those notes. All those chords are. Now, there are some notes that sound better over certain chords at certain times. But that's why I'm telling you the 1 of each chord, the root. If you're playing a G, play a G. If you're playing an A, play an A. If you're playing an E minor, play an E, right? If you're playing a C, play a C. Whether it's C major or C minor, whatever key you're in, play a C. That's the root note, the home note of the chord. Or play the fifth of that chord. Right? If you're hitting E, that B is a 5. If you're in D, that A is a 5. If you're in C, that G is a 5, and so on. The 3 is always right here. Look. Next string up, 1 fret down. For major. If it's minor, then the 3rd gets dropped 1. So if it's C, the 3rd here is E. If the chord is C minor, the 3rd here is E flat. Sounds very bluesy, right? C minor, C major. C minor. So it's that root, the 5th, and the 3rd. Target those every time the chord changes without changing the scale, ever. And that's what you saw me doing in the solo in the beginning. Then, once you get that down, you begin to add chromatic notes, notes that are not in the key, in between to spice things up. You start worrying about bending and using double stops, 2 notes at a time, and trills and hammer-ons and all that fancy stuff, once you understand how to get around using that system. Now that's what you saw in the solo that I did at the beginning of the video. So let's play the backing track, which is G major, E minor, C major, D major. It's the 1, 6, 4, 5 of the key. It's the first note of the major scale, making a chord. It's the 6th note of the major scale, making a chord, E minor. It's the 4th note of the G major scale, making a chord, C major. And it's the 5th note of the G major scale, making a chord, D major. So let me solo a little bit and talk to you at the same time, tell you what I'm doing. Now I'm going to take this E minor pentatonic scale. We're playing, and that's a G major scale. Whatever the 6th note of your major scale is. E, in this case in the key of G. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. That's right. That gets the minor pentatonic scale in the key. That's how you figure it out. If you're playing in B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, what do you have here? You have G sharp. So that G sharp pentatonic is going to be your root right there is the B. Remember now, the root note of that scale becomes the key that you're in, right? The root note of the key that you're in. So we're in G. So we're going to use this G as our root from the E minor pentatonic. We still use those E's, of course, which are the 6th. Right? We're going to use that scale right here. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to move from there. And every time the chord changes, I'm going to target that root note. So when we're on G, I'm going to start. Then I'm just going to play a lick, anything I want. When the next chord comes around on the 1 of the beat, when that chord comes around, I'm going to hit the root. So the next would be E, right? So I'm going to hit that E. Or that E. Or that E. Or an open E. Or this E. Okay? And then when a C comes around, now you say, where's the C in that scale? Well, it isn't in this particular scale because the 4th note of G major is C. We're going to that chord. But that particular note is not in the E minor pentatonic because the pentatonic's only using 5 notes from the G major scale. And C is not one of them, but you just add it in, right? If you were going to B minor in the key, then you'd hit the B. If you were going to F sharp minor, half diminished, but we'll just call it minor now. If you were going to F sharp minor, because F sharp is in the key of G, it's the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. F sharp. If you were going to an F sharp chord, it's not in the minor pentatonic scale. of E, but you would put it in. So there's the C, there's the F sharp. You just look around for the notes that are in the chord that's coming and nail it, right? No matter what you're playing, what song, right? So if you're in the key of F, count up 6 notes in the F major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got D. Play D minor pentatonic. F as your root. Whatever chord comes around as you're looking at the chart or you're learning the song, just look for that root note right near that scale. If it's not right in the scale, look for it near it and nail that when the change comes. Then just play any lick you want out of that scale with its extension. Right? Play any notes from that scale and just nail the root or the third or the fifth of any chord that's going by. Now watch how I do it as we play through the backing track again, just using this scale. G, E, C, D, back. Now, we're going to target the fifth of each chord. Okay? So in G, the 5 is D. There it is, right in the scale. Right? When we go to E minor, the 5th of E is B. Right? There's the B. There's the D. There's the B. And when we go to C, the 5th is G. When we go to D, the 5th is A. Okay? So it's going to say, instead of saying G, E, C, D, back to G. Right? That's going through the progression in my head. Now, instead of doing that, we're going to do the 5th. So we're going to go D, B, G, A. Play the roots and the fifths back to back and you can hear the difference between the two. And then you mix them up, see? That's the key, no pun intended. Then you mix the third in. Now you got 3 target notes for each chord. Once you get used to all that, you'll be kicking ass all over the fingerboard. All right, roots. All right, now let's mix them up. Now you know what's next. We're going to add in the third. Then, of course, you would combine that with the fifth and the thirds and move it all over the fingerboard. Now you can do this, remember, I'm using just the E minor pentatonic or the G major scale, leaving out a couple notes. You can do this from your G major scale all over the fingerboard. The same principle applies. When I solo, I'm thinking down here, G major, a G major pentatonic, right? That's the same as the G major scale, just leaving out a couple notes. Then you got your G major scale. Ending on the third. Then I've got a G major scale right here out of this G chord. So I'm covering, right, the whole thing. And I've got this E minor pentatonic up here. We're going to get there. Got it down here. So I've got this covered. I've got this area covered. I've got this area covered. I've got the G major right here. Down to the E minor pentatonic. Then I'm back to the G major. In that position, same as this. So the same principle of the root 3 and 5 applies everywhere. You learn these patterns and you start applying the 1-3-5 technique to it, and then just do whatever licks you want, staying in the key of G major. In between, you've got the neck covered. You've got the fingerboard covered. Well, there you have it, string slingers, the 1-3-5 principle. Apply this to whatever song you're playing. When you come to a minor chord, remember, a minor chord in any song, emphasize the minor third when you're doing the third. Okay, that's the only change. You see, oh my gosh, this is D minor. What do? You play D, or you play the fifth A, or you play the minor third, which is F. Okay, same thing. So don't panic when you look at any chord. What if it's a G7 chord? What's a 7? It's the 7th note of the major scale, flatted. Same thing as the third. Just go down a half step and flat that. It shouldn't be that way. That's music theory for you. But when you see a G7 or an A7, it's the flat 7, the lowered 7, down a half step. Just target that note. Oh my God, there's a G7 in this chord. Well, you don't have to play the 7. Remember, just play the G or play the 5th, which is D, right? That's all you need to do. But if you want to emphasize that 7 because it's a different chord in the progression, you want to highlight that 7, just look at the root and drop it down a whole step. There's your 7. If it's E, drop it down a whole step. That D is your 7. So when you come to that E7 chord or the E minor 7 chord, just nail that D. And they'll look at you like, damn, yeah, dude's nailing the 7th. There it is. Those are basically the chords you're going to see in any rock tune. A major chord, a minor chord, or a 7th chord, which is a dominant 7th chord. Dominant meaning that flat 7, okay? The 9ths and the flat 9s and the sharp 4 and the 13. If you're playing jazz, well, then you apply those principles. But we're talking rock here, right? Blues, country. You're going to see the major, the minor, a major 7th. If you see a major 7th chord, not a dominant 7th chord, not just G7, but G major 7, then you play that regular 7 that is in the key, in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, F sharp. Then you play that F sharp. If you see G7, that means the flatted 7. If you see G major 7, it means the real 7, right? The regular 7 that's in the scale. All right, one more time, I'll say it. If you see a G7 chord, it's the flat 7. If you see a G major 7th chord, it's the regular 7. Major 7th, regular, 7th chord, flat 7. Otherwise, just play the root note of the chord if you get tripped up, or the 5th. The root, the 3rd, and the 5. Learn the major scale all over the fingerboard, and then just nail the root 3 and 5 of each chord as it goes by, and you're golden. I'll see you next time.